Welcome to Prism Technologies. I am Venkat. This is part 41 of ASP.NET Grid View tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss about inserting, updating, and deleting data using details view and object data source control. In the previous session, we discussed about doing exactly the same thing using SQL data source control. In this video, we will be using object data source control. Obviously, we will have to use object data source control to perform insert, update, and delete. Then our employee data access layer should have those respective methods. Now, if you remember, in the previous sessions we have been building employee data access layer, but this layer has got only methods to select employees data at the moment. So obviously we need to add insert, update, and delete methods as well for our employee data access layer. And to speed things up, I have this code already typed, so let me copy and paste that within our employee data access layer class. So the first method here is going to be insert employee method, and if you look at this method, it has got several parameters. Why is that? That's because if you look at TBL employee table, it has got several columns for which we'll have to supply values when we insert a new row into this table. Okay, so and to pass those values we have these parameters: first name, last name, city, gender, etc. And another important thing to notice here is that this insert employee method does not have a parameter which is going to supply a value for this ID column. Why is that? That's because the ID column within this TBL employee is the identity column. For the identity column, we don't have to supply a value when we insert a row. That's the reason why we don't have an ID as a parameter for the insert employee method. Okay, so we have these parameters for this method, and then the rest of the code that we have here is straightforward ADO.NET code. Okay, so the first line here is reading the connection string from web.config file, using which we are creating a SQL connection object, and then we have our insert query. So this is a straightforward parameterized SQL insert query. So insert into TBL employee values, and we have the parameters list here. Okay, so for each of the SQL parameter that we have in this insert query, we need to prepare a SQL parameter object, which is what we are doing here. So all of this code here is actually building the parameter objects and then associating those parameter objects with the parameters collection property of the command object. Okay, look at all of them are parameters. Okay, and then to collapse them so that we can read the code properly, I have used a region here. So let me collapse that. So what are we doing here? We have the insert query. Using that we are preparing the SQL command object, and then we are building our parameters, and then open the connection, execute our non-query. So that's the insert method, insert employee method. Okay, along the same lines I have update employee method, but here if you notice we have ID as well, because why? When we are updating an employee, we'll use the ID column as the key column so that we can uniquely identify an employee and update his record. Okay, so we have all the parameters again here. The same idea: read the connection string, prepare the SQL connection object, we have the update query, and then using that update query, prepare the SQL command object, and then obviously for each of the SQL parameter we need to assign a value and a parameter name, which is what we are doing here. So let's collapse these parameters and then open the connection, execute that update query. Alright, so that's update employee, and finally we need a method to delete employee as well, and this has just one parameter, because why? When we delete an employee, we don't really care about other columns. All we care about the ID column based on which we want to delete the employee's record. So that's what we are passing in as the parameter. And again, straightforward code: read the connection string, prepare the SQL connection object, prepare your SQL command object, associate the parameter with the command object, open the connection, execute the query, and we are done. So at the moment we have all the methods: insert, update, delete, and select within employee data access layer. So now let's flip to our webform1.aspx, drag and drop our grid view control. Let's auto format that. Let's choose brown sugar scheme. Let's drag and drop details view control. Let's auto format that. Let's choose again the brown sugar scheme, and we need two object data source controls, so let's drag and drop them onto the web form. Okay, now let's build our solution so that the employee data access layer is compiled. So click on the tasks pane of object data source 1 control, click on configure data source, choose your business object. It's going to be employee data access layer, which is present in demo namespace. click next, choose your select method. The select method is going to be get all employee basic details, which is going to return a list of employee basic objects. Okay, click finish. Now associate this with our grid view 1 control, and we want to enable selection so that the select link button will be shown within the grid view control. So the next step is to configure our object data source 2 control. Select your business object, which is going to be the same thing, demo.employee data access layer. We need to specify our select method. This time the select method is going to be get employees full details by ID. So once I select an employee record within the grid view control, for that selected employee we want to show the full details within the details view control. So obviously the method which is going to retrieve the full details is going to expect an ID. So that's what is the parameter here. And then in addition to that, we also need to specify update, insert and delete, because our details view control should support, in addition to selection, we should be able to edit, delete and insert a new record as well. So let's specify the update method, which is going to be update employee. The insert method is going to be insert employee, and the delete method is going to be delete employee. Alright, with that, now we need to specify the parameter for the select method. So where is the parameter value is going to come for this ID parameter for the select method? It's going to come from another control on this web form. Which is that other control? That's grid view 1. Okay, so ID is going to get its value from the selected value property of grid view 1 control. Click finish. Now let's associate our object data source control with our details view control. And look at that, the moment I do that, I have these options: enable, inserting, editing and deleting as well. Why is that? Because our details view control has the methods to do that. So I'm going to check all these boxes. Okay, so with that I'm going to run this, but then we'll get an exception. We'll solve that in a bit. Okay, so we get an error saying data keys must be specified on grid view 1. Why is that? Because we have seen this error several times now. That's because we are using the selected value property of grid view 1 control. So if you have to use the selected value property, you need to set the data key names property. So what is the data key going to be for our grid view control? It's going to be the ID column. So let's go ahead and set the data key names property, which is going to be ID. So now we should have that problem gone. So when the web form loads, it should show all the employees within the grid view control. But the problem here is, we don't want the details view to be visible if there are no employees selected within the grid view control, and we have discussed about this as well. Now to solve this, all we need to do is we can make use of the page pre-render event. We have seen this problem in the previous sessions as well. So let's use the pre-render event. And then within the pre-render event, if there is no row selected within the grid view control, if selected row is equal to null, meaning no row selected within the grid view control, then we want to hide the details view. So details view 1 dot visible is equal to false. On the other hand, if there is a row selected, then we want to turn on the visibility of details view 1 control. So details view 1 dot visible is equal to true. It's simple. Alright, so that should solve that problem. So obviously when we run this now, when the grid view renders, details view should be invisible because no row is selected. But once I select a row, I can see that. Now let's click edit here. And look at this, when I click edit, first of all the problem is ID, first name, city. I don't want this at the bottom. I want this to be on the top of the details view. And the second problem is ID is the primary key, which is non-editable. I don't want that to be editable. Let's solve both of these problems. Okay, and obviously to do that, let's flip the web form to the source mode. And then let's retrieve these three bound fields, which are displaying ID, first name and city from the details view control, and then move them to the top. Okay, and then we don't want this ID to be editable. All we need to do is we need to set read only to true. Okay, so now let's run this, and then let's select this and let's click edit now. Okay, look at that, ID is non-editable. Now let's change Nick's first name from Nick to Nick1, and then let's actually update this. Look at this. Is this updated? We don't know. Let's actually check the database first. So Nick, let's execute this query. Look at that. Nick's row is not updated. Why is that? That's because, if you want the row to be correctly updated, then for the details view control, you need to set a data key names property again. So within the grid view, within details view control, what is the key field? It's the ID again. Okay, so we need to set that for details view as well. So let's go ahead and set data key names is equal to ID for details view. Now let's run this and then let's try to edit and see if it works. Let's close all the other tabs. Let's select Nick's record. Let's edit that. I'm going to change Nick to Nick1, and then let's update that. Okay, so look at this. It's updated within details view. Let's see if it's updated within the table. It's updated within the table, but then the grid view control is not refreshed. So how to refresh the grid view control? Obviously, when we update the row within the details view control, an event is raised, details view, item updated event. So within that event handler, all we need to do is refresh the grid view control. So let's do that, and we have to do that when we delete and insert as well. So let's generate the event handler for all the three methods. For all the three events. So that's our details view control. Go to the properties by pressing F4, click on the events icon, and then item deleted. And we also want to do the same thing when item is inserted. So let's generate that event handler as well. And finally for item updated. So what should happen when we update or insert or when we delete an item? The grid view should be refreshed, and to do that all we need to do is invoke the data bind method of grid view 1 control. And then we don't want any row to be selected after the row is updated, so I'm going to set select row property of grid view 1 to -1. Okay, let's do this. Let's copy and paste this code in the rest of the event handler methods that we have here, and let's run this now. Okay, so I selected Nick's record. I'm going to edit that. I'm going to change that from Nick1 to Nick. Update that. Look at that. It's updated. The grid view control is refreshed. Let's select that. Let's basically insert a new record. Again, look at this. When I try to insert a new record, again it's asking me to supply a value for the ID column. Remember, ID is an identity column, and we don't have to supply a value for that. Okay, and there's no reason why we are showing an interface here to do that. So when I put this details view in insert mode, I don't want this ID bound field to be rendering here. So how do I turn off this field from rendering here? It's very simple. All you have to do is, this bound field has got a property called insert visible. All I need to do is set that to false. Insert visible is equal to false. And once we do this, run this now, when we put the details view within insert mode, you don't have that visible anymore. So let's actually change this to first name to A, city to B, last name to C, gender to D, date of birth to something 0121, country to E, salary maybe 12, date of joining, and marital status M. Let's insert this and see if it gets inserted. Look at that, it's inserted. Let's check our table quickly. So there's a new row there. Let's select that and let's try to delete that. Look at that, row is deleted, grid view control is refreshed as well. Alright, so in this video we have discussed about using object data source control to perform insert, update, and delete. On this slide you can find resources for ASP.NET, C# and SQL Server interview questions. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.